I'm so glad to have you all here. Thank you for coming. I want to start with a question for all of you. Both in the U.S., as we've already talked about, we're seeing, and now, internationally, we're seeing governments withdraw funding for humanitarian aid. And I'm wondering what role you see for the private sector in helping fill this gap.
Sure, I can jump in there. Thank you for having us. And, I think there's a large role for the private sector to support. We are really proud to work with the World Food Program and to use our scale, scope, and capabilities as one of the world's largest logistics providers to really think about what is our special sauce, right? And I think as the private sector thinks about how they can help, sometimes it's cash assistance, which UPS has been very proud to do. Sometimes it's using their loan managers or using resources inside with like board service or folks that really know the work and can support some of the logistics capabilities of the nonprofits. Sometimes it's volunteerism. We know that volunteerism is down across the world and that there's a need for nonprofits to really benefit from the volunteerism of the employees within the walls of the corporation, and it creates really great synergies. Employees love to volunteer. It creates a great value proposition, but it also gives the nonprofits something that they also desperately need. And so I think it's just thinking through what your capabilities are and how you make sure that you're leveraging what you do best.
That special sauce is really important. Zebby.
Yeah, sure thing. I think, let me draw the picture. I think when you look at Citi, I think folks may struggle to draw the connection with a financial institution and kind of our interest in hunger. But I think when you look at it, hunger is really undermining economic stability. So when you think about us as a financial institution, hunger impacts education, which, Barron talked about earlier when he talked about if folks aren't eating, they're not showing up to school. It impacts education, it impacts health, it impacts workforce development. So when you look at it from that lens, hunger is a very, very important topic when we look at thriving communities and how they economically thrive from a financial institution's perspective. I think zoning into our work at the Citi Foundation, I think we really pride ourselves in, allowing folks the space to innovate. I think a key piece around our work right now is putting money where the need is in terms of building out long-term solutions, not necessarily just those Band-Aids. So when we look at this program that we're rolling out now called the Global Innovation Challenge, we've really put money into organizations that haven't been able to secure funding prior to test and innovate ideas that they just are now burgeoning and coming out with. So I think that's very crucial. I think another role that we play is really as a convener. We don't pride ourselves as food experts in any way. But giving nonprofits the space to pick their heads up from the work, establish a space like this and speak with each other, understand the challenges that they're facing, that they're not alone, and that there are solutions that fellow organizations are working on that could be implemented by other organizations is really key for our work. So that power is convener and also investing in projects that may or may not be able to secure funding because they're more innovative and more on the cutting edge of things.
Yeah, I love that. I love the convening part especially because it's what we talked about earlier, breaking those silos and getting people to talk to one another and organizations to work together. Kelly?
Yeah, absolutely. I would say, at Starbucks, we have the privilege of being a part of tens of thousands of communities around the world, whether that's where we have our retail coffee houses, whether that's where smallholder farmers are growing coffee to supply our customers. So having a resilient and healthy community is really important for us, not only from a business perspective, but it's an imperative of our brand and our mission and values of who we want to be in the world. When I think of the partnership with World Food Program in Guatemala in particular, we're doing some really interesting things where we are taking an active coffee supply chain that we have been working with and inserting nutrition and women's leadership and entrepreneurialism to help drive diversified income, to drive additional income, and really trying to connect some of the systems so that that community can be much more resilient in the face of climate change and other challenges that come their way. This is one model that we hope to replicate. And if I can add, in North America, we're extremely proud that every one of our coffee houses each night is donating food to a food bank. And if you think about 365 days a year, 20,000 coffee houses in North America, that adds up. And to date, it's over 100 million meals that we've been able to help infuse within our local communities. Again, stronger communities is good for business, it's good for all of us.
Thank you. Nikki, I want to turn to you again, and I think so many of us take it for granted that we can get shipments delivered to our home within hours sometimes.
Right.
And I'm wondering if you can talk about the challenges of last mile delivery in rural areas, whether it's the United States or in other parts of the world, and the innovations that are really possible to make the delivery of humanitarian aid possible.
Sure. We're really fortunate that we have, more than 100,000 UPS drivers that are able to bring things right to your doorstep. And sometimes that's not the case in remote parts of the world. And so when you think about using your innovations to figure out how are you going to get something from point A to point B, whether it needs cold chain storage, whether it's food and grain, how do you work with the experts to determine not only how you're going to deliver things to the final mile, which UPS is one of the experts in doing, but also how do you make sure that the food, let's take a region of India, for example, to make sure that that grain is stored properly, that it doesn't waste, that it doesn't spoil. And so that's one of the things that we have been really proud to partner with the World Food Program on. We have worked with the government of India in connection with WFP to build smart warehouses that are acclimatized. We have asked our IT technologists to come in and work with WFP to deliver resources that support making sure that the warehouses are appropriately secured, that we've got smart robots that are able to support pest infestation, and those innovations are now being scaled across different geographies in India, and so we're really excited about that. The other challenges that sometimes a global logistics company can support are things like customs clearance.
Right.
If you think about moving across boundaries and not realizing that once you ship let's say a pallet full of generators from point A to point B, someone has to clear those generators at customs. Someone has to figure out that there's a consignee and then to get those things delivered directly to where they need to go without being pillaged, without being stolen, without them being on a black market. And so those are things that when you use a trusted logistics provider, we're able to work with our nonprofits to be able to make sure that the food, the generators, the water, the tarps, the emergency supplies get to where they need to go.
And that knowledge sharing is creating institutional capacity, intellectual capacity for those folks so that they can continue spreading that knowledge to others.
That's right, and it's also building trust, because what you want to make sure of is that in the communities that are desperate for your help, that when you don't show up properly, when things are not delivered with dignity, then you've got individuals on the other end that start to mistrust the system, and that's not good for any of us. And so that's why we love partnering with WFP, because when you think about who has the trust on the ground, right, you're able to connect and build that infrastructure so that you can make sure that you're delivering just as we would want right here in New York or anywhere else. Everyone deserves dignity in their services and their support.
Well said. Thank you for amplifying that. Zebby, I want to talk a little bit about, philanthropy can often be criticized for creating dependence. And I want to talk to you a little bit about how grant-making organizations can empower the communities they support.
Yeah, I know I touched on this a little bit earlier, but I think when it comes to specific our philanthropy, allowing them to leverage our brand, I think that's a big piece. Specifically with the program that I mentioned earlier called the Global Innovation Challenge, that's only a $25 million program. It's only a drop in the bucket when you look at the need. That said, we pose it as catalytic funding to really garner attention of other funders of these organizations to really double down on their investments. So it's really meant to be catalytic in nature to really jumpstart, again, investments in those innovative ideas that they haven't yet been able to secure funding for. That said, the other piece I do want to hit home on is really the convening piece. A lot of organizations, like I said, are putting out fires left and right, and so they don't have the capacity to pick their heads up and ideate, create. But creating that space for them, I think, is a tremendous help. I mean, organizations may or may not have the capacity to set aside a space like this to bring folks together and have those specific conversations and bring it to the forefront of those who really need to. So really the convening power is another piece I really hit home on.
Amazing. Thank you. Kelly, I want you to take us back to Guatemala for a minute, and I'm particularly interested in the challenges that women farmers face all around the world. Can you talk about some of the impacts on the generational impacts on women and girls that you're trying to help sort of alleviate so that they can, thrive in their lives?
Sure. Coffee growing is not easy, especially with climate change. You've got the emergence of new pests and diseases coming. You've got erratic rainfall. You've got weather conditions that are less predictable. And all of that unpredictability creates uncertainty for coffee farmers, and especially women who may lack the ability to access credit or have some of the same access to capabilities and technical assistance. I am really proud of the holistic support model that Starbucks has had in place for years. We have farmer support centers around the world that are offering agronomy services to Starbucks producers, but also to any coffee producer in the region who needs technical assistance. We have a loan program to get capital to coffee farmers. Again, all of this to build resilience. But what's so unique about the initiative with World Food Program is we're bringing these things together. We're focusing on indigenous women and children in Guatemala who are coffee farmers in the Starbucks supply chain. And it's a multifaceted effort to make sure that it can withstand the test of time, that it can sustain itself, and it's generated with input from community members. So it's not Starbucks coming in and saying this is how it should be done, but rather through World Food Program's way of operating, really listening to the community. And the notion of the sustainment is really hinged on, the women's leadership, building women's leadership and empowerment in the region so that they have a voice, they can control their destiny, and ultimately, have a healthy life,
right.
Raise their children the way that we all want to raise. So again, it's about resilience, it's about technical assistance, it's about empowering women, and all of these things coming together are generating income that will sustain.
And I want to reiterate something you said. It's WFP's way of operating because they work with communities. They involve them from the very beginning. That is so important to all of the work that you're doing, that you have an organizational partner that understands the challenges and knows how to solve them, right?
And I'll just add, too, I wear two hats at Starbucks. So I lead our corporate efforts and our foundation efforts. And so what's unique is this is not philanthropic work that we're doing. This is an investment from the corporation to strengthen the supply chain, which I think is a really unique component of that. We do philanthropic efforts, and those are important. And we try to have those complement our overall approach. And supporting women and girls in coffee, tea, and cocoa origins is a really high priority for the Starbucks Foundation.
Thank you. Nikki, I want to turn back to you. Whether we're talking about coffee or any other crops, storage facilities are really essential for creating food security solutions. What are some of the innovations that are making it easier to keep food from spoiling from your perspective?
Sure. I talked a little bit about the grain, the grain storage in the smart warehouses that we're scaling in India, and we're really excited because the government there has now taken that up and said, we want to move this to a larger scaled replicable model. Another thing that we're really excited about that we've worked with WFP on is a grain ATM. And this was, again, born out of a challenge that with women being able to have their proper access to the rations of grain. And there was a lot of discrimination in the rations and the distribution. And so we worked to underwrite grain ATMs that actually really made it fair for folks to come in, and it's now served over 113,000 people, and it's dispensing more than 600 metric tons of grain, and it's a smart chip card. You go and swipe the card, it dispenses the food, and there's no questions around whether or not the person is being able to have denied access. You've automated it, so using innovation, but also listening to the community to find out what their needs are, and then thinking about how can you really meet those needs at a local level, but on something that's also to scale.
It's so cool. It's hard for me to wrap my head around how has the community reacted donated to that Greene ATM?
With deep gratitude and excitement, and I was thinking about some videos. I was telling Barron earlier that my goal next year is to actually go and into the community and see and talk to the women. But
Yeah.
we've seen the videos of them using the Greene ATMs, heard the anecdotal testimony of how important this has been. Because again, it goes back to dignity. If you have walked and carried your children, expecting that you're going to be fed and you're denied, and then now all of a sudden you have an opportunity to really help support yourself. You've got that trust. You've got the capabilities of feeling like, someone sees me, someone's listening, and there's a solution for me that I can go back and do something that we all take for granted every day, which is just simply feeding our kids.
That's amazing. Thank you. Zebby, I want to turn back to you. Do you, Citibank is such a brand, right? It's everyone knows it all over the world. And I wonder if you find that consumers are looking to support brands that are doing things like the Citi Foundation is.
Yeah, that's such a great question. I think without a doubt, so the answer definitely being yes. I think we definitely have been hearing from clients the prioritization of investing in communities where we do business. Since our origins. Definitely amidst this current environment, folks want to make sure that we're standing, 10 toes down on some of our commitments. And I think we've definitely been hearing that from the consumer perspective. I know folks may not see us, like we don't have a physical product per se. Yes, we have cards and things of that nature, but we very much so are a consumer-facing business. So without a doubt, yes. I think as we further develop our strategy, we're listening, we're hearing, we're figuring out ways to be creative and innovate on how we continue to double down on our partnerships and even go deeper. Take, for example, I know our partnership with WFP in Zambia has been one that folks have paid a lot of attention to. I think really given the holistic nature of the partnership, and like I think Nikki had already mentioned, how WFP really listens to the communities, and it's one that folks have really put in the forefront. I think the holistic piece of how they're supporting the communities there really stands out. Everything from developing applications and this program specifically focused on smallholder farmers there, and really connecting their surplus of food to those that need it. So developing technology to bridge that gap. I think that type of innovation really stands out and is something that folks really revere as an investment on our part.
Right. And as a foundation who's sort of new to food and hunger, I think it's exciting that you can, come into this space and offer so much.
Yeah, it really all goes back to the focus of hunger really, really undermining financial stability. Once folks wrap their heads around that, you can really understand why it means so much to us at this point. Right. And really understanding, how we continue to create. And even as we look at, our bread and butter has really been with youth employability. Right. So really looking at the future generation and the role that they play in food security.
Nikki and Kelly, do you find the same thing that, consumers are responding because a brand that they recognize, that they see every day? I see my UPS guy every day.
Thank you.
Thank you. Do they equate that with, the good work that you're trying to do as well?
I think there are two ways to answer that. Number one, we do this because we know it's the right thing to do, right? And we do it because we can and we should. We have a massive operation, whether it's our trucks, whether it's our planes. We've been delivering things via drone in terms of looking at regions of Africa where folks are not receiving vaccines, and we're delivering those vaccines and cold chain storage. And so I think once people connect the dots between what are your capabilities, right? And when you already have the trust of your consumers, it's a value add. Yeah. It's another way that they say, I knew I liked UPS, but now I like them even more because they're showing up in these spaces. And you have to storytell, right? I don't think they necessarily know until you tell them this is how we're showing up. And here's our why. Yeah. Because in this space for WFP, we know that there is enough food, but hunger is a logistics problem. And we feel like we're best positioned to help solve that. Yeah. And so if you think about, your why is around that financial inclusion and knowing that hunger is really disrupting, financial stability. So I think when you connect your why to your mission and to what you do, it speaks for itself with the brand, and that consumers respond to that when you're authentic.
Absolutely, and genuine, for sure.
Yeah.
That storytelling is so important. Kelly, do you feel like Starbucks is able to tell this story effectively?
I would say yes and no. I think it's the question I get most is, why aren't you telling these stories in a bigger way? And I think that's always work in front of
Yeah.
us. Our customers are wonderful in that they come to us for the amazing products, for that experience, that coffee house experience. And when they learn about what we're doing, let's say down the street by donating food from a local coffee house, they're thrilled to hear that. They're happy to hear that we're doing that. And I think there's an expectation from our customers that we're doing things in the community that matter. I think when we talk about coffee farmers and it being more remote from where someone physically is located, it takes a little bit more effort
Sure.
to describe why it's so important, what's the root cause, how difficult and challenging it is, and how we need to collectively work together. That's a harder, more complex story, but I think over time we're starting to tell that and building some awareness. But again, it's about doing the right thing. It's not solely for brand trust or sentiment, but I think the more we can get people to care about issues near, local, and further away, the better.
Absolutely. Zebi, I want to give you the final word. Any quick advice for a corporate foundation that, wants to get into this work and doesn't quite know how?
Oh, I feel like this may be above my pay grade, but advice. I wouldn't say advice. I think just this holistically comes from my recommendation. Invest in the ideas aren't yet proven yet. Like invest in those innovators who are really testing the ideas. I think that really makes the transition again from those temporary solutions to that lasting change, honestly. So that would be a recommendation, not advice. Take it or leave it.
Invest in innovators for lasting change, everyone. Thanks to this panel. Please give them a round of applause. Thank you all so much. Thank you.